By now, you may have heard the news that's making national headlines. This past weekend in St. Louis, Missouri, a couple reacting to protesters walking by their massive estate on the way to the governor's mansion drew weapons and took aim at the protesters. Two things are at play, and one is winning out versus the other. It's freedom versus fear in America. And that's the subject of today's ongoing conversation. All that coming up in just a moment. But first, let's roll the intro. Hey, Reframe crew, welcome back for another video. I'm so glad that you tuned in again today. Say, if this is your first time here, a warm welcome to you. My name is Jason, and on this channel, we are all about reframing the way we see ourselves, other people, and the windows of our world. If you haven't already, consider subscribing right now by clicking that button, ringing that little notification bell, and that way when I post brand new content on a weekly basis, you'll already be notified. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple different video clips of what happened in St. Louis this past weekend with this couple drawing weapons and aiming at the protesters as they were watching by. But before I get to that, I think it's important that we look at that through the lens of freedom or fear. And we're going to do that by going to the Bible, by looking in the book of Galatians, chapter 5, verses 13 through 15. And we're going to use that as a lens, if you will, at this whole situation. So I'm going to grab my Bible app and then put the words on the screen for you to follow along. For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters. But don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. For the whole law can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as yourself. But if you're always biting and devouring one another, and I'd put in parentheses in fear, watch out. Beware of destroying one another. Okay, with that in reference, let's turn our attention and watch these video clips from a couple different angles. This is going to be about a minute. Roll the footage. Okay, somebody ask you, do you see freedom or do you see fear? Who are you seeing freedom from and who do you see fear from? The couple with the weapons or the protesters walking by? Let me know down below. Now I'm going to share with you what I think. I think the couple that owned that mansion, that huge, massive estate, I think they were in absolute fear. I mean, why else, in my opinion, would they come out of their homes with guns blazing, pointed at the protesters, and threatening to shoot them? We can't hear what's coming out of their mouth. I mean, that's covered up by what the protesters are actually saying. But their actions speak louder than words. Now, I don't know these people from Adam. I don't know them at all. And I can only guess at what they were thinking. But here's my thoughts. I bet they were afraid for their estate. I bet they were afraid for their property. And it's interesting when I've read the articles about what happened here, the articles tend to talk more about the property and about the estate and how it was listed in one of the most beautiful properties in the area and how much money was poured into it. Interesting where the priorities are being put with that. But, you know, this couple, they're obviously affluent. So they're probably trying to protect their property. They're probably trying to protect their estate. The question is why? No one was charging their property. No one was on their property. They were walking on the street and on the sidewalk. They weren't charging the people and they weren't charging the house. So why are they so afraid that they're going to come out of their house with an AR-15 in his hand and a pistol in her hand? And then he picks up the weapon and he aims it at people, and she's taking her gun and kind of waving it around and pointing at him. And in one scene, she actually moves down from the porch down onto the grass to get closer to the people as waving her gun, as though she's provoking them. Provocation, acting with hostility, doesn't come from a standpoint of freedom. It comes from a standpoint of fear. What did they have to fear? A big crowd? Black people? Are they fearing for their wealth? I mean, we're seeing class warfare going on. We're seeing race warfare going on. Getting back, this couple wasn't responding out of love. They're responding out of fear. But notice the actions of the protesters walking by. And oh, as a side note, the only reason the protesters were walking by that couple's house and walking through the neighborhood was to get to the mayor's home, who days earlier had called for a press conference and publicly released the names and addresses of some folks in the city who were calling for the defunding of the police department. She doxed them. It wasn't illegal, but it was certainly a bonehead move that caused more ire and stirred up the protests. So they were responding and protesting in reaction to that. They were marching onto her house. There was no threat to this couple's estate. But in their minds, I presume, they were coming under assault. Why otherwise would they have come out there with weapons and aimed them at these people? That's not freedom, people. That's fear. Now, as a preface, I'm going to say this. I support the Constitution. I support the Bill of Rights. I support the First and Second and all of the amendments. These people have the right to bear arms, as well as these protesters have the right to peacefully assemble and to peacefully protest. But what this couple did not have the right to do was to grab those weapons and aim them at the protesters walking by and to insinuate violence. I mean, thank goodness a shot was never fired. Could you imagine what would have happened if a shot had been fired? Had one protester been shot? The rest of them would have stormed the couple. They would have stormed their mansion. And then more shots would have been fired. And then chaos would have really gripped this nation. It could have really gone badly. In my opinion, what that couple should have done is, one, just stay inside. Or two, if they wanted to come out, just watch. Or three, if they really wanted to respond, maybe respond in love to their fellow brother and sister walking by. Respond in love and come out with some water, a cup of water, a bottle of water, and offer it to the protesters as they walked on by, whether they agreed with them or disagreed with them ideologically. That point's moot. What they did is they responded out of fear. And we're seeing that happen more and more and more in this nation, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop. And it starts with you, and it starts with me, reframing how we see ourselves and reframing how we see our neighbor and this world. We got to start seeing one another as human and as valuable and as worthy, not as objects to point a weapon at like we're on the hunt. Your property really doesn't matter that much. Your life and the life of other people matters so much more. When are we going to start to learn that we got to lower the rhetoric in this nation? And that starts with you and me thinking through our actions. Had the mayor not done this in the first place, had the mayor not doxed the names and addresses of those she disagreed with, of those who were calling for the defunding of the police, that protest would have never taken place in the first place. And then no one would have passed by that couple's home. And none of that would have ever happened had the mayor not called for a press conference and just kept her mouth shut. It's a lesson in there for us all. Before we do anything, before we respond to anyone, sit back and think about, what are we thinking? And if we're going to say something or do something, how might other people respond to our actions? Because we're either going to respond out of fear, we're going to respond out of freedom and love. And depending on what we do, we're either going to inflame the rhetoric and make matters worse, or we're going to bring us to a peaceful solution. So my thoughts for today. Say, if you like this content, I want to encourage you to share it, but I want you to do a couple other things. I want you to watch these two videos up here if you haven't already. One is called Fear, the Real Killer in America, and the other one is called Should We Just Flush the Politics? I want you to watch them both if you haven't, and then share those as well. Say, if you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. I mean, just crush it, and ring that little notification bell. And that way, when I post brand new content again this coming Friday, you'll have already been notified. Until this coming Friday, I pray that you're blessed, and I pray that you're saved. Goodbye for now.